Okay, so the session is being recorded. I've just made sure of that. So we can go ahead and we can kick off. Um, so folks, I mean, there is someone sharing video right now. I think it's Allison. I'm not sure whether it's super necessary to share video right now, but you're more than welcome to join by video in a little bit when we do more of the interaction stuff. If you are at all familiar with our Power Digital sessions, they are meant to be very quick, very high impact, very punchy ways of you being able to recognize quick fix ways of being able to grow your business, get some leads going. And that's really what these sessions are about. They're meant to be super quick, super high impact. So it's all about what are those few things that you can do to really scale your business and get a lot more sales coming in. That's really what the game plan is behind these sessions. And feel free to interact. You can use the chat box. You can also use voice if you'd like. It's entirely up to you. I am aware that a lot of you haven't seen this particular slide, which I've shared prior presentations of this nature. So I'm just going to go through it very quickly. I'm not going to go through the whole mechanics of it. You'll even find an in-depth blog about the subject on our website. So I definitely encourage you to, if you need deeper reading and if you need more data, definitely go back and have a look at our website. We've got a lot of this covered for you. On this particular slide, the main message that I really want you guys to get is that you need to break down your core deliverable along the new digital funnel. So in the past, we just had a very simple, straightforward sales funnel, and that was the main funnel that we spoke about. But as time went by and as marketing and digital marketing in particular started becoming very important as a source of new business, we extended the funnel to include all of the digital entry points into the funnel, which is way, way, way at the top. So when we talk funnel today, as opposed to the past, we generally mean a marketing funnel, and a sales funnel is becoming less and less of a thing, believe it or not. So when we talk funnel, the first thing that you want to do is you just want to make sure that whatever you're doing every single day, that you have a means of reaching people who are completely unknown to you. And I would say that if there's any single goal for the modern day marketer, it would be keeping your attention and keeping your goals focused on securing brand new sets of eyes. And that really is the main goal of any marketing unit today, using digital marketing techniques. You're constantly looking for new ways to land new sets of eyes. When people have already interacted with your brand or interacted with business or engaged with you in any way, leave that to sales and let sales focus on sending out, building out newsletters, and maybe even doing some direct contact with those individuals. But really, in the modern day nomenclature, you have a clear breakdown between inbound, which is and outbound, people who you know. There is a lot of noise, and I'm not sure that everyone is hearing this, but if you're not muted, perhaps it would be valuable for you to mute yourself. Oh, I don't know if that solved anything. I'm just going ahead and muting a few people here. Okay, good. So again, if you have any questions as I'm rambling on, please feel free to stop me. So again, what you want to do is you want to break down your marketing efforts between your inbound, which is purely all about reaching new sets of eyes, and outbound, which is reaching people that you have some kind of connection with. So inside Black Fox, in terms of how we look at problems when we're addressing new business development with customers, we look at list building as step one of our problem. And you have to have a system in place right now that's consistently building a list. And the list has to be built legitimately, which means that you need to acquire subscribers the hard way, which also means that you need to make sure that you are not necessarily buying lists or doing anything weird, especially with all the new acts and legislation coming into play, and the fact that even Poppy has jurisdiction over Africa as long as it's touching European customers. the rules around list building and how we go about managing that list is becoming more and more stringent. So you have to have the proper systems in place to every single week build up your list. And your list means that you're acquiring names and identities of people that have previously been unknown to your company. And how do you do it? You do it by giving them some kind of intro service, some kind of ebook, some kind of giveaway, possibly a special offer. And you just like luring all of these people in towards you by using all these gimmicks. And you're doing wonderful things like putting out landing pages that really speak to the message of your customer. And we'll get to that in a second. So the simplicity of it is that phase one of marketing, which you can consider your pure inbound strategy, the end result of that is you need to have a list that's consistently growing every single week. The key point about your list is that your list might not at this early stage be a list of customers. They're just a list of people who are seeking to engage with your brand. And it's very important for sales and marketing to come together on a very clear agreement about this. And I see a lot of failure in different teams where there is a lack of agreement and where sales is expecting pure leads to come from all of the traffic acquisition strategies. So for example, if you look at the top of the slide, you have 6 different methods to acquire traffic. And it's your digital PR, which would be your blogs, your social posts, which are free. You can just do posts on social media. You could do SEO. All these are methods. These are 3 free methods that you could use today to just land your message in front of brand new sets of eyes. And as long as you're using the right hashtags, your social media posts are going to land up in front of brand new sets of eyes. And that guy is going to eventually come up to your website and he's going to give you his contact details. He's going to sign up for a newsletter. He's going to sign up for an ebook. He's going to sign up for a webinar. He's going to do something. But at the end of the day, he's signing up. And as long as he's signing up, he's joining your list. Also, you could use paid methods. You could use AdWords. You could use boosted social. You could use banner advertising. And again, it's a really, really amazing way to get a whole lot of new names to come to your landing page and to come to your website. But at the end of the day, the important thing that marketing needs to keep in mind is that when that list is built, those are not necessarily at this early stage a list of potential buyers. They're more likely a list of people who are interested in who you are and who want to engage with you at some level. And it might take 6 months, possibly 8 months before that list eventually drops into the sales funnel. And getting that agreement going between marketing and sales is critical. Now, that's your typical organic approach. You could put out a lot more sales-related information when it comes to paid. Sales-related information, which is your typical advertising stuff where you go up on social media and say, we have running a special offer for blah, blah, blah. It doesn't work very well on your unpaid method. So if you're just using traditional Facebook, traditional Instagram, traditional Twitter to go and get customers, unless it's a very consumer-centric brand, because remember the messaging here is all B2B, we're definitely focusing very heavily on B2B, because B2B, quite frankly, is far more challenging on social. Unless you're doing a very, very Tupperware type of selling approach, you're not going to land guys who are ready to buy from your social posts. So what you want to do is you want to create a flow line where you use paid to generally do the more salesy kind of messages, because then what Facebook and the other engines will do is they will place that message based on your demographic definition. They will place it in front of the likely buyer. So it's okay to go a little bit more advertorial when it comes to paid. But when it comes to organic, when it comes to your blogs, when it comes to social media posts, you cannot be salesy. You cannot be advertising, not when it comes to B2B. So that by definition tells you that the people who are signing up are not necessarily immediately that day going to buy something from you. So really your big interest on that first phase is list building, and you track your success based on how rapidly and how successfully is that list growing from day to day and from week to week. Once you've got your list, that's where outbound kicks in. And this is where you really start sending good quality communication, newsletters, updates. You continue inviting people in for webinars. Maybe you invite them into the office for a Friday braai. Maybe you invite them in for a webinar, or you do a light educational showcase, anything that's valuable to that list. As you can keep adding value to that list, you're going to see something remarkable occur. You're going to see that bit by bit by bit, that list will eventually drop into the sales funnel, which we've got at the bottom of the slide, and that becomes deals that's that sales start to now track as actual real business. But prior to that point, that list is not to be in any way neglected or underestimated, because that is your gold. You'll find that on all major platforms around the world, list building is one of the most critical pre-steps to the sales funnel. And unless you're setting up your business to think in that way and to appreciate the list in that way, you are going to fall short in the future, because in the absence of a list, you're never going to get good quality identities dropping into your sales funnel. So moving along, and let's have a look at, and this is again some stuff that I have covered in some prior discussions, but I'm going to get more into the deeper level of the story in today's session. The thing that we find is that when you're doing an organic approach, and organic simply means it's a simple way of saying non-paid. So when you're not paying for advertising, if you go onto LinkedIn, for example, and if you put out good quality posts, LinkedIn is one of the most fantastic platforms to do or to conduct a pure organic approach. So LinkedIn, in the context of B2B, gives you two excellent vehicles. The first being your posts, your traditional social posts on LinkedIn. As long as they vary, you conform to some of the guidelines that I'm about to share with you. You can use LinkedIn for your posting, but in a non-paid way, it's a lot more effective, in my opinion, at this point. However, it also gives you LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is actually a social outflow vehicle. So if we just look at the prior slide, there's a little arrow here that says social outbound. So if you want to bypass the top end of this funnel diagram, if you want to say, hey, I've got no time to put up a landing page, I've got no time to put out webinar content and ebook content, and I have no time to bother myself with all of these inbound techniques. You don't have to have an inbound policy in your company. It's good to have one, and it's going to be good for your business, and it's going to be good for your sales in the long run, but you don't have to have one. You could bypass that entire top bit by just going directly to potential clients using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. But again, you have to understand, you have to be super clever in the way you reach out to people, because people don't like responding to those in-mail messages. So you have to craft quite a nice story. And the other big thing that you have to realize with LinkedIn Sales Navigator is that it is going to take a bit of time. It's not like an overnight win. You will get that meeting if you're super clever about how you navigate your words and how you navigate your content, but it's not a quick win. In fact, none of these things are quick wins. And if you're looking for a silver bullet in digital marketing, unfortunately, experience taught me that it doesn't exist. Everything takes quite a bit of time, and you have to give it that work and that elbow grease to get it right. So let's look at what some of that elbow grease actually is. Before I go too deep into this message about the story, let me just pause for a second and see if there are any immediate questions. Okay, so I'm assuming that there's no questions, but feel free to add your questions to the group chat. I'm monitoring the chat very actively right now. So if you do have a question that pops into mind, feel free to let me know. So let's just get into this whole thing called the story. The trick with organic and the trick with reaching people on social is that right now we are seeing an influx of information from absolutely everyone. Just about anyone who has access to a cell phone camera is today a world expert in some area. So everyone wants to give advice on everything. And I'm a fine one to speak, because here I am giving you advice on all of these wonderful things. So I suppose, par for the course. The reality, however, is that what's happening with our consumers or our customers is that they're just bombarded with a ton of information. So now we're finding, particularly over the last 18 months, 2 years, that there's a very strong trend towards story. And we thank the social media giants for that. We thank the likes of Snapchat, Instagram, etc., for popularizing this concept of the story. And it's really quite phenomenal what's happened in the last 18 months, 2 years in the world of social. We're finding that people are just gravitating towards this native human tendency to appreciate stories more than we appreciate content. So yes, story is a special type of content, but I mean, just think about this for 10 seconds. If you had to be faced with a page, like if I had to just say, take a blank page right now and write down a whole lot of facts. So go search some chemical equations on Google and just write down a ton of facts on a piece of paper. And then what I'd like you to do is take another piece of paper and just go and write up a quick story, something that you may have heard from a friend a few weeks ago, and see the difference. Which piece of paper resonates more with you emotionally? Which piece of paper connects deeper with you? And which piece of paper are you most importantly likely to give your attention to? And then as a byproduct, remember. And that's the most important thing about a story. I bet that if I pushed you, you could go and you could find and dig up a story of something that happened at the office or happened with a family member. And it's, you know, you could even like remember juicy details about how, oh, and when he said this, she did that, and blah happened. And then, oh my God, and you won't believe what happened after that. And that's a story. And at the end of the day, human beings can remember stories with vivid detail. And yet, if you give someone a list of chemical, you know, just some, I don't know, some formulae from chemistry or from some other area of science, and if you just ask someone to memorize that page, it becomes a struggle, and it becomes difficult to confront that content and to interact with that content. Again, there's someone else who's not on mute. If I could just ask you to just please be on mute, because then it just distracts a lot of people. I'm getting to say that. Let me just handle this, guys. Bear with me. If you have just joined, and if you are on mute or you're not muted, please do let me know. Or just try your best to go on mute, because it's taking quite a while. There's a number of attendees on the call, and it's really hard for me to find a person who's not currently muted.
We didn't see that email address.
Yeah, I'm getting back to that. Sorry, I wasn't meant to change the slides. It's just that I'm
Hang on, he wasn't meant to change the slides, so we can get it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. So folks, I can't locate the person who's currently not muted, and I'm going to ask you please very, very politely to make sure that your microphone is muted. Otherwise it becomes very distracting to others, and I am getting messages in the group chat. Okay, good. So I'm going to keep going here. So just to pick up where I left off, the key thing that we want to look at is we don't want to bombard the market with just generic content. We don't want to bombard the market with just, you know, constant pieces of facts. People don't like a string of facts. People don't connect with them. They don't remember them. It just becomes lost in a sea of information that is just all over social media. So on that note, what I'm going to encourage you to do is start crafting your narrative. So what you've got to do is you've got to think about what are the topics that are important to my market. So that's where you start. So the one thing is to craft a narrative, and everyone, I'm sure, will agree that the importance of a story is paramount. So you tell a story, you never just provide facts. But also you've got to tell a story that's in some way related to your market and in some way related to what they're interested in. So you got to go and find that out. You're going to use social listening tools. Social listening simply means it refers to different types of tools out there that give you insight on what topics are trending and what topics are being spoken about by the masses, and specifically by your target audiences. That's what social listening is all about. So what you want to do is you want to use social listening tools. You want to scour the market for information before you formulate your own content strategy. And really, you want to get away from this notion of talking about your product, because guess what? No one is arriving on any social media platform today to find out about your product unless your product is a super well-known product that has become very widely adopted the world over, backed by very strong brands. So right now, if you are looking at the first oval, that's the traffic acquisition oval, and that really is all about making sure that you reach people for the first time with the right message. And our advice is that when you're doing that first step, and that first step maps back to the first 6 steps on the previous slide. I'll just remind you what those were. So now we're talking about, when we talk about traffic acquisition, we're talking about blogs, social, SEO, AdWords, boosted social, and banners. So if I go back here, those are the traffic, the 6 traffic acquisition steps. Best, can you please handle that? You know, these are the 6 traffic acquisition steps that we use to get new traffic into our properties, our web properties, or our pages, etc. So those are the only 6 methods that you need to know. And then once you're operating at that level, and once you are operating at that step, you guys have to keep in mind that every message you put out on the internet should be all about your customer. So it's really all about your customer. It's finding out what they like and talking about that, finding out what they dislike and saying that you dislike that too. That's what that first step is about. You're not talking about yourself. You're not advertising yourself. You're not saying how good you are. It's just a bit weird when you start doing that excessively at the early stage. However, once the person comes to your landing page, once they come to your website, that's what we call the bridge. That's the bridge between them, their world, and your world. So it's okay to start creating a nice melting pot between what you believe they're interested in and what and you want to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you're interested in. So it's really that meeting point between your world and their world. So it's a great way of using your landing page content to string together a nice message that says to the market, hey, we get that you like blah, blah, and blee, and we are here to provide blah, blah, and blee. And it's really like bringing those two worlds together. But again, you should always do this in the form of a story, meaning you have a very carefully crafted narrative that resonates with that market and that connects with that market. The key things about a narrative is that it's always human oriented, it's always authentic, and it always lends itself to some degree of an emotional response. So when you're looking at a narrative, you want to look at what response, what emotional trigger am I trying to achieve with this message. So it could be that you're trying to give your market some relief. If it's for example cybersecurity, the fear that your market is struggling with, you want to hone in on that fear and use a nice story which connects with that audience on the subject of fear, and then bring them relief at the end of that story. So basically, in many respects, you're becoming a story writer, a storyteller when you are building out your content, and you want to steer away from the very scientific approach of giving facts and figures. Absolutely, you have to support your data with facts and figures, but tell a story around the facts and figures. Make it anecdotal. Tell the real life story of one of your clients that went ahead and had a massive attack, and that affected its clients, its employees. It managed to survive, managed to come through that, but they went through quite a bit of an ordeal and a difficulty. And that personal story, someone is going to connect with, and someone is going to take action based on the fact that you pushed the right emotional button. So it's all about knowing your market, and it's about connecting the right story with the right market. In terms of the example that I provided there, it could be that you are selling cars and you decide that you're gonna start showcasing some kind of supercars as part of your message. And the first thing to do as part of your traffic acquisition is just talk about cars, because you're talking about the cars that your market is interested in. And then on your bridge action,
just plug it in.
The point at which they meet your world with theirs, that's the point where you're going to offer them something. You're going to say, how about you come through to our premises and we're going to have a supercar Sunday, and we'd like you all to just do test drives of the latest and the greatest, and then you're going to have all the petrol heads show up. But if they're interested in supercars, and if you do a supercar test drive showcase day, that's what it means to bridge between your world and their world. And then afterwards, it's only when you're really in front of your customer.
Website where you can
again, guys, if you are not muted,
rent it back from the people who sell
Christian,
it
it's someone by the name of James.
Yeah, I've heard something like that before.
someone.
You can sell your car and then you can rent it back.
I just don't know how to do it, really. I'm going to mute. Yeah. Okay, good. All right, I think that worked. Okay, folks, so just to wrap up this particular section, in the world of B2B, and especially in the world of tech, you want to save the product story for when you get in front of the customer. And this is where we get into the actual sales cycle. So when you're in front of your customer, you're going to get deep into your product. But even then, you're not going to start with your product. You're going to just start at the top part of this oval. which means that you're going to really, when you're in front of the customer, you're going to get to know them super, super well. And that's really how you start a successful sales cycle. You do a lot of deep digging at the start of the sales cycle when you're finally in front of the customer, and only eventually, when you truly believe you understand that particular customer and his needs, then only will you start the very heavy product conversation in front of them, or maybe even a demo type conversation. So let's just dig deeper a little bit more into this whole storytelling piece. And this is the narrative piece that we find a lot of people struggling with. I don't think anyone has a problem with the theory. It's just a case of the execution. The execution is super, super tough, and it's really hard to hold the attention and engagement of people. And that's why you have this concept of an influencer and a social influencer that happens, because those few people, for whatever reason, seem to just hone in and connect very intimately with their market, and they tend to tell the right stories that captivates and influences their market. So let's just break out the process flow that we use inside our business. We start off with a very important step, and we call that the understand step. And this is such a critical step. Like, you have to zoom out from social media for a second and realize that what I've put forward in front of you right now is nothing more than a human to human connection workflow. Yes, it's true, we're using a native human connection on social media channels, but it's no less a human connection. So you want to start off by understanding. I mean, just picture going and communicating with someone you've never met before. The first thing you want to do is you just understand a little bit more about who they are and what they do before you just ramble on. You want to connect with the human being. So you always want to start by understanding. And I would say that if ever you're planning any kind of social media approach or strategy, and if you're not going to do that really well, don't bother doing it. You're just going to wind up wasting your time and wasting the time of your market. Understanding is all about really trying to figure out what are people interested in, what are they talking about, what language do they use, what do they prefer, what should be avoided by you, what about them can you help, what problems of theirs could you help. It's really about understanding and figuring out who are you reaching and who are you attempting to connect with. From understand, this is the golden rule. If you really understand your market and you understand what's happening with them and where they're at, you can then very gracefully move into this next step called clarify. And this is all about educating your market. And the best part about educating is once you've figured out a few things on the earlier step, the education comes so easy. You don't have to even go and complete a master's dissertation in order to educate your market. You just simply speak from your vantage point. You can do up to 50 LinkedIn posts, organic LinkedIn posts per day, with just a few simple statements where you're just giving hints and tips. You don't have to include images. You don't have to include video. You don't have to do any of those fancy things. Just clarify and educate, because once you understand, the clarification step is going to come so easy that you're going to be posting a ton of stuff all the time. LinkedIn, I would definitely suggest using that approach and try to avoid any kind of heavy spend on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an incredibly expensive platform. And from a personal point of view, and this is purely personal, I'm not saying that I'm expert at this, but I think that LinkedIn is still trying to figure out their pay strategy. I think that they've cracked it on organic. And if you go and look at the real thought leaders in the area of organic, they are suggesting that you use LinkedIn cleverly in terms of just tons of organic posting. And then you go into groups and then you place your organic posts. Your organic post just means posts that you create and type by yourself. And you go and do them in relevant groups. And when you do it in groups on LinkedIn, that's when you see some real action and you're going to see some real activity, because there you're speaking to a specific group about a specific problem. So if you go back to this slide, the understand step is so easy to do when you're working inside groups in LinkedIn. General LinkedIn, obviously it's going to be a little bit tougher, but once you're inside a group, it's so easy, because that group is generally it's a common interest group. They have a common problem, they have a common goal, and you understand what that is. So when you communicate, it's so relevant to that group. So the understand step is very easily accomplished when you start thinking in group terms on LinkedIn. But again, you're not limited to LinkedIn. I'm just giving you a few tips here. Then the clarify step, like I said, you start shooting from the hip a little bit. You just put out a whole lot of posts. You just work on making sure that whatever you do, it's all about educating and helping and teaching, not selling, not advertising at all. Then we glide into this next step. And if you're doing the prior two steps well, you'll find that you'll start telling more stories. And we hope to God that you do, because you could find that after you've sent out a few messages to do with just a tip here and a tip there, you'll find that you'll start sharing some interesting stories about customers that you've helped or incidents that you've had in your personal life. And it could be in your personal life. You could share a personal anecdote of what happened between you and your kid a few nights ago, and how what the kid said and what that response was. And that whole thing could be a beautiful story that you craft that just grabs everyone's attention. And you're going to find the most amazing things happen in social media. You never know what's going to go viral anymore. In fact, viral in itself is not necessarily always the most common concept anymore. Like viral is something that doesn't really happen too much anymore, But the point of it is that you can create content that engages by chance and by fluke, just by telling a few stories, and you never know which one is going to catch on. And then the next thing you know, it's being shared and everyone's interested in that. So your job is you just keep those stories flowing. And it could be the simplest story, it could be the humblest story, but something about it captures interest and everyone starts going crazy about it. So again, as a summary, you understand, you start clarifying the message, educating, and eventually your education will find itself evolving into more of a narrative. And I say, give yourself freedom. Don't try to have everything figured out. That's the whole point of lean marketing, iterative marketing. Give yourself freedom, allow yourself to make mistakes. Start just by putting out a few educational messages, a few educational tweets. And then as you move into doing that a lot, you'll find a narrative starting to build and a narrative starting to emerge. When someone tries to craft their narrative very theoretically and they try to do it all in a textbook format, and before they even touch social media, they never really make it out to social media. What you've got to do is learn through action. So just get out there and start posting, start giving tips and help. I mean, I met this guy from Saudi Arabia a couple of years ago, and all he did was, for the Android platform in the early days, he just put out tips. He just became an expert. He understood his market. He became an expert at knowing what tips to give. And all he did was on Twitter, he started putting out tweets that were little tips. And he wound up getting, I think it was more than 50,000 followers in only a matter of a few months. And it was only because he just did nothing more but gave helpful tips to the right market. And then eventually, as he started seeing what was resonating, he started telling more and more and more stories. And it wasn't just a case of the tips. It was also a case of, the actual incident in life that happened, or what were the consequences of not getting that right. And that became more of a story. And eventually now with Twitter threads, you can even do, even Twitter is set up to accommodate for longer stories. And it all plays into the central theme that the one thing that the market is looking for more than anything else right now is a story that they can share and that they can tell on your behalf. So at this point, I did a lot of talking. I was trying to get through a lot of content very rapidly. Let me pause here for a second and see if there are any questions or any comments at this point. Okay, so I'm assuming there's no questions or comments. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to move off to the last slide here, and you can get my email address off the slide. I also want to say again, our content that we put out today is already available at our website. You'll also find that the last slide that I presented is available in infographic format on LinkedIn. So you're going to find a lot of this content available online at our website. It's just available everywhere. So there's no point in me having to share it again. I hope that you got some value out of this. And again, if you'd like to reach out with specific questions, you're more than welcome to. If you'd like to talk now, we have like 2-3 minutes left. But outside of that, really appreciate you coming online and joining us for this quick power session. I hope you did find it as a high impact, punchy, just some quick advice that you can implement rapidly. And do let us know what you think, and keep signing up every month for these sessions. Thank you so much. And I think we will wrap if there are no further questions. Okay, good. Thank you. It's my pleasure. All right. Good. Okay, very good feedback coming through, guys, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, team. We'll see you next month.